Good evening, everybody. So, like, in comparison to Andreas' talk just before mine, this is a bit more of a use case style. Like, it's a thing we really struggled with. That is for the subtitles. So, if everybody thinks about PWA and Magento, but PWA and Magento is really a rough ride. Yeah, just a small thing about me, Nils. That's the wrong one. A backend developer. Yeah, really enthusiastic about the Magento community and communities in general. And right now, I'm the develop lead at Gastro Hero, a professional kitchen seller for like restaurants and hotels and so on. Yeah, our motivation, why we want to combine PWA with Magento 1, especially in cases where you say, yeah, Magento 1 is nearing its end of life quite recently. Like we decided late 2018 to do so, but we said, yeah, but why we need to switch with the end of life? It's only a couple of different things, and we are not really affected by any of those. We are quite happy about our current Mage1 setup. So, but we need to do something security-wise because afterwards it's could be a pain to keep up security. So our inspiration was, yeah, if we do not have Magento front end facing a customer, yeah, we do not suffer from old security problems. So this was an idea, and making migration later on easier without struggling with an unknown front end. Another point definitely is performance. Like in PWAs, you can have at least quite a sophisticated performance when it comes to catalog browsing and so on. So this was also a thing where we said, yeah, especially uncached and with the more dynamic your content gets and the more target groups you want to directly separate on and so on, you need to have your content ready, even uncached, or at least as less cache as possible to have it fast. So this is another thing. But honestly, the initial point why I brought it up in our company was a thing like developer happiness, I would call, because yeah, tinkering around with Magento 1 for the better of the last 10 years. And many of our people are quite eager on getting on and doing new stuff. And that's a thing that's not so easily combinable in one sentence with Magento 1, new and properly built. And by this we thought about, maybe we can bring up a completely other toolkit where we can just play around with, get like recent knowledge and so on, and to keep our developers up to date. That's a thing also not only of current developer happiness or current employee happiness, but also of employer branding for like the future. It's a thing, especially for a merchant that seeks in-house development. It's always a bit tricky because normally you're not targeted or by the really tech-savvy developers. They normally go elsewhere, where what they really combine in their mind, what they can really relate to on a tech journey, but not a merchant. So we wanted to fix this because at least it is really, really great to have good people on board, and that's the thing where we just started to grow and get more interesting for current or tech heavy developers. Yeah, like I said, it was late the year before last year already. So there were a couple of solutions that at least touch PWA back then already. Mainly, Magento PWA Studio, the Deity, View Storefront, and Front Commerce. And so we did some kind of testing and investigation around it, if any of these tools fits our need or just directly disqualifies for us. Upfront, I have to admit, we were completely uninvested in current JavaScript technology. So if it be Vue, if it be Angular, if it be React, no matter for us because we knew nothing about any of those. But more to this a little bit later. So back then, Magenta PWA Studio, like now, Magento 2 only. I just stated we do not want to have this in one go, so we have wanted to have separate projects out of it. So this was more or less directly a disqualifying thing. It wasn't. On the other hand, it wasn't ready back then, and honestly, what I've seen, I doubt it's currently. A really great point. It's open source, but contrary, our experiences with the modern architecture of Magento 2 front-end changes like UI components were at least mixed. Then we had Deity, but it wasn't publicly available back then. It was only doable with Hatimera or Deity, and it was a thing they postponed and postponed and postponed their public availability. And that is the thing where we said, okay, if it's not possible to at least try it with them or so, it was directly out of the loop. Although I had to admit that this was the solution I knew about the first, and it was really interesting in the beginning, but when it's not available for the public, it wasn't of such a great use for us. Then there was also Front Commerce. They, in my opinion, they suffer from a really, or back then, a really expensive proprietary license, and we were not able, by no means, to get figuring out something with them, like some kind of demo or so, that we could get a really deep look into it. So by this, just like buying something completely unknown in such a rough world, it's a thing where we said, no, we won't do this. So that left us more or less with Vue Storefront. At least they offered some kind of Magento 1 integration. An interesting one, but at least it was we were able to put it to some use. At least they heard about Magento 1. So they were open source. Another point for them, especially like we needed to adapt quite a lot of the tool. And for me personally, making the final decision was they already had a great community. They had gathered around lots of developers that were using or at least trying it out, blogging about it and so on. And I knew Piotr from before, and so we came into a bit of a chat, and finally we said, okay, as we are not hindered by any tech decision in there, we will give this one a try. So after this was decided, we started to prepare, or not so much for this. Our preparation was more or less in a thing where we, after the evaluation period, we sit down with everybody of us, I think everybody of our team, like 8 developers back then, for a long weekend. I think we started on Friday and left on somewhere on Monday. And so to give it a kickstart hackathon style thing, so everybody was setting it up, getting first steps done and so on. Especially if you're touching completely unknown technology. For most of us, this was really, really helpful because you did not need to find out everything again and again and again. Especially in our case, as we are a completely remote team, this was really valuable for us. After this, I think 4 days it was, we got a working implementation on our data set. So we had it running with more or less with their default theme. We had our own header and footer already implemented. We had already some kind of navigation or menu structure. we had filled categories, we had product pages, like a charm. It was so easy. What we later on really suffered from was we had no idea about Vue, JS, and especially Vue Storefront. This was kicking us hard later on. So in there, we encountered, we started with the real implementation early, I think in February, end of February 2019. And we encountered some really hard obstacles in there. Like, it was a thing we did just not really visualize or grasp by our first implementation hackathon. It was, they had a given URL scheme, and it was not, you were not able to change it. That's not such a big of a problem in a shop that is starting from ground zero. But for something with at least established URL scheme, our SEO was really revolting about this, especially as the URL scheme back then was, I would say, questionable. Like, it was always domain/c/category name for category. So to let the router knew about what kind of entity you're calling it. So to have internal logic based on this, and by this, it was not so easy to bypass. Later on, we figured out a way to do this together with Devante. Yeah, multi-store. There was no multi-store. It was there, but the configuration wasn't really honored. So you could configure whatever you like, and it was using a default store or at maximum one other store, and like overriding, like you can do in Magento, like overriding your parent with some of the store views or so, just impossible. If you set it once, it was set. Yeah, this was a hard struggle with Devante. So until they really thought about the problem, because in general, what we've learned is, yeah, Vue Storefront back then was an agency's solution, open sourced, and they had it built for their needs, but we did not know this in advance. Like with multi-store, they had really difficult attitude towards text handling, like hard-coded text percentages, no possibility of different text percentages within one store, like with customer groups or so on. So not so uncommon for Magento, but at least for Vue Storefront, it was really badly done back then. The Magento 1 integration was spotty, at least. So it is really, it's still a thing that's not, I would say, it's way behind the Magento 2 one. I've just took some experiments with Magento 2 in there, and it's done way better and way more complete. But of course, it's a thing of lacking Magento 1 APIs. So it's really hard to do. Another thing that is quite hard to do, but that's not a thing of Vue Storefront especially, but more about using Vue and the single page application with the kind Magento is handling its CMS content. Like, it's really common to have styles defined there. It's really common to have, like, especially for widgets, calling or injecting JavaScript, and therefore your Vue application breaks. To find out this, it's a thing. Even today, this from time to time breaks our page because one of the content people accidentally puts in JavaScript or script text, and then, yeah, not so good for the front end. But we figured this out, and nowadays, if you spot the problem, it's kind of easy to find out. But as the application is completely crashing, yeah, you do not get really meaningful errors, and it's crashing on the client side, so this really limits your possibility for logging and so on. Doing proper server-side rendering, it's a thing where they nowadays admit maybe our approach in Vue Storefront 1 to server-side rendering could be improved, but back then it was simply a thing of we had no better solution for this. No problem. It makes life a bit harder, especially getting fast content or content really fast for first requests is not so easy. And one of the biggest obstacles at all, there is no checkout, or there was no working checkout with Magento 1, because probably most of you know the checkout in Magento 1 is not really easily usable by REST API. The implementation wasn't there for a checkout in Vue, but there was something like a fallback checkout. So you just could, behind the cart, you can say, okay, please use the former Magento checkout. And this is a great solution if it would have worked in Magento 1 and not only Magento 2, because of problems with session synchronization and cart synchronization and so on. But the moment we figured this out, I raised a voice to Piotr and says, yes, just yesterday, you are really lucky. Just yesterday, we had to fix this for one of our clients, and here is a solution for this. But please be a bit cautious. We do not know if it's completely working. After some time, I would say a day or so, together with them, we were able to figure out how this completely undocumented stuff could work. And nowadays, it's the one thing that really made us switching a bit earlier, so without the Vue checkout, because for everybody doing payment integrations from PHP, it's maybe for many it's not so easy. Especially, we are talking about some really, really strange implementations. For them, you need to think about sending a CSV file by email is interpreted as an API. So there are, in B2B land, the interfaces you have to use can be a bit different from what you assume. And building all different payment integrations on our own in like Vue wasn't on the top level of our eagerness. So we just said, okay, we will bring up everything until checkout. And then later on, we just do the checkout. And it's a thing because of different internal struggles, we just recently restarted, I think a month ago or so. And right now, I'm happily looking forward, like probably during May, mid-May, end of May, we will bring up our first fully capable checkout solution in Vue Storefront for Magento 1. But it's just still, we just need to implement, I think, 2 or 3 different other payment providers and then give this one a real intense testing phase. Even after we went live, we had a couple of issues we did not think about before. So it's an ongoing struggle. It's not just a really hard ride until you get it live, but then it continues, especially if you are not so profound with JavaScript single-page applications or PWA in general. And yeah, as we were only PHP backend developers, our most sophisticated JavaScript we knew was like something between TypeScript and jQuery. So this was hard, especially things that really hit us later on were SEO and SEA, because even Google is not sticking to their advices regarding SEO and handling of server-side stuff in a single-page application. They just do not follow it from time to time. Like for dynamically loaded content, they just wait for 5-6 milliseconds and then they say, okay, it's not loaded, we go on. So they cannot navigate your page at all if you rely on JavaScript navigation and do not have real HTML stuff in there. It is really frustrating. Our formerly heavily JavaScript inclusion of third-party JavaScript, like different widgets or so on, tracking. Yeah, it spawns problems all the time. One thing is the initial bundle size and reloading things or not having events ready in all of those because you do only one loading event. It's a thing we really struggled with, but that was definitely because of our inexperience in JavaScript in general. Like I've mentioned it a couple of times, performance for the first load is a thing that was really, in the beginning, it was completely devastating because in our case, we had a problem of we were slower because of a big bundle size, because we messed this up quite severely. But nowadays, it took us roughly a week or two to get to the initial loading speed we had before. But the on-site browsing or the on-site using was really fast from the beginning. So this was it's a bit of a trade-off in between. Yeah, and cross-device functionality and performance is a thing because you cannot scale the end user's devices. If they are older, slower, and you have a huge impact on the performance in there, it can get quite slow on your end. And like we've encountered multiple occasions where JavaScript is handled differently in different browser versions on different mobile systems, on Mac, on Linux, on Windows. Hell break loose. We are still fighting these userland problems because it's not so easy to see userland errors. We use Sentry.io for this. It's a really great tool for capturing user or browser errors somewhere. But not everything really was completely blown apart. I have to say, everything else besides the small issues I mentioned really went well. It was one of the main parts after our developers got really on track and so on. The initial learning curve felt like really flat, but then it's more or less you heard it clicking and then it skyrocketed. It's a bit of a thing like you have to wrap your head around like asynchronity and so on in JavaScript. Maybe not so easy for a pure or hardly focused PHP developer before. So the stuff our developers acquired, learned, and so on is really, really great, and everybody was really happy afterwards. Yeah, and like I also mentioned this in the beginning, we hoped for, and it worked out like we hoped for. The working together with community, with the open source part of Devante was really, really great. Like it's a thing they understood from my point of view how company-driven open source project should work. It was a breeze. Every time we had bigger issues, we had an idea, a bigger pull request, we just sat down with them and asked them upfront, come on, how could we structurize this? How could we make it more reliable together, maybe with one of you, just with your advice, and like bringing in multiple new features or fixing really strange behavior of theirs was no problem. They are very supportive in there. Yeah. In the end, it was a thing where we really had to admit that Vue Storefront wasn't as far and as production ready as it looked like during our first hackathon. I think that is one of the most iconic experiences we had. It looked really, really good, and we were really, really eager that we will get it done quite fast. And then reality struck. Okay. One of the biggest problems definitely is if you are heading into no man's land or unknown space with a crew that is completely unprepared for this. you really need to be able to count on the eagerness to learn and develop themselves. In our case, this was no problem for anybody. Every backend developer happily jumped on the train and nowadays uses Vue Storefront. Some not on a daily basis, some more or less do the API stuff that is mostly in Node, but everybody got a really profound skill set in JavaScript, what they mostly lacked before completely. The community, like I've often said, is really impressive and it's a pleasure to work with. Like their core development team is so super supportive. They are reachable. Every other guy or girl, every other person we met online or on different hackathons. I think we attended 5 or 6 hackathons by Vue Storefront. It's a great community edition. So it feels really welcoming and open-minded. So great place to be, great project to participate in. And for us, a really interesting thing was back in end 2018, early 2019, it was a thing everybody I knew of was talking about PWA. Nobody we talked to really knew anything profound about it or had really hands-on experiences with it. And out of these, nearly no one, none had experience with Magento 1 and PWA. It was, I thought there would be more people that are, I would say, advancing in this regard, or especially in the general PWA part. It was hard to get some reliable information for the like e-commerce system. It was interesting to gather information. Yeah, but generally nowadays it's still in everybody's mindset, and still I would say a minority of shops use it to a good put it to good use. So the I would say the ecosystem around the implementation amount of implementations has not changed substantially, but at least I know nowadays more people that are trying it at least. Yeah, yeah, Jakob. Yeah, that's totally correct. We are missing multiple of the core PWA signature features. We at least started with SPA purely, and then we just we are cautious to add more features to all of this. So yeah, that's for me. For now, thank you for the opportunity. And I think we can go on with some questions you may have. If you want to do those directly, like audio or chat, it's up to you, I would say.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the same thing, that you can either chat, you can either put your question in the chat, or you can push the button to share the audio and video, and you can join us here, show your face and smile, and then ask your question.
Yeah, I think
there are some questions already from
Alexei. There are already some questions. I think the one from Jakob I already answered.
From Alexei?
Alexei. We definitely had heavy impact in SEO rankings. Definitely. We lost a huge amount in especially in the Google Search Console, because we lost a huge amount of visible products because Google is not following pagination if it's not done correctly in JavaScript. This was one of the, so Google only saw the initial page, and therefore if you have paging, it's just a small amount of products we had. I think we dropped roughly for a week or two, we dropped roughly 80% of our products from Google indexing, and it was easy to re-establish, luckily, and we were not hurt by this in the long run. But initially, it was a jaw-dropping experience to see the curve not really flattening, but completely going down. What's on the roadmap, Hank? Yeah. Right now, it's like we switched. Right now, we switched roughly half of our shops to the to view storefront. The rest is following because we need to do more templating and extending functionality for those. And the next real big thing is having a completely view-based checkout ready. Like I said, I think roughly 3 to 4 weeks it should be. Then we have this, and then we need to probably, I think, a month more or so to have it ready in every shop, because we want to go with one or two that have solid payment options and not some really strange ones. Wouter, how hard is this to move to Magento 2 or another system now? I think right now, especially if there is some kind like View Storefront API connector for this system, like for Shopware, for commerce tools, or so. I don't know what they have on their shelves right now, but I know there are a couple of connector interfaces for different shopping systems, and I would assume that it should not be so hard to move on, because yeah, every bit of data is coming out of Elasticsearch and nothing directly from your shopping interface. So you maybe need to to tinker a bit with the indexing from your shop to Elasticsearch, and then it should be quite easy. Marcel, where do you recommend to start with Vue Storefront, other front-end frameworks? If I put it from the beginning, yeah, really hard. I think it's a thing for a backend developer. I'm still mainly focused on backend development because I wasn't able to do so much hands-on. It's a thing. I would say it's definitely the part on how JavaScript is handling asynchronity. I think for most of us, this was the hardest part to get around. And if you then can, like nowadays, if you can start with Vue and like composition and TypeScript, it's a huge thing you do at once. But if you get the the motivation around the choices and so on, I think the probably the biggest next obstacle is state handling, like with Vuex. But I think that's a thing. You probably cannot do structurized everything in one go. That's the thing that really hit us hard, and that's why it took so long for us to get on speed, because the sheer amount of stuff we needed to learn from scratch was really high. And having somebody in your team or at hand that is really experienced will help quite a lot, I think. Yeah, Alexei, if we would do it the same, yes, we would choose the same technology. Probably, no, not probably, definitely, I would insist on getting more training and at least a bit basic experience with Vue.js and Vue Storefront in the beginning, definitely, because this would help quite a lot. But in general, yeah, we would do the same thing again, to like put everything down and in one basket to be able to go on from there. Definitely, I think the like in the beginning, it was a rough ride, but yeah, rough rides can, if you are not drowning, even things like rafting are quite interesting. So after even a long journey, it took us, I think, from end of February to early October last year to get this done. So quite a time frame, way longer than we expected before. But in general, I would say, yeah, we did everything correctly, beside being a bit too unprepared and over eager to, and yeah, we generally, I would say, we overestimated our capability of adaptation and underestimated the sheer size of the technical problems we could face. Anything else? Yeah, how did it affect the hardware budget? Yeah, we're paying way less now. But honestly, in the beginning, we paid way more because it's a thing where we needed to switch from something that is really, really hardware efficient, like PHP in within like Apache or Nginx, and switch this to things like Node. It's a huge impact on your memory drain. It's really, really crazy, like having multiple npm processes or node processes running with 300, 400 megabytes of RAM. It's not a uncommon issue. CPU wise, it's great. So I cannot say different. It's really great. We really now I think we could cut down roughly 30% of our CPU. Hank, do you mean in general? Yes, we do. Like Bartek, I just posted the URL, and yeah, what do you mean by this in general? So if we still are able to use Google Analytics, or what do you mean? Because the difference. Yeah, we can see the difference right now. We are using some kind of A/B testing for one or two of our other storefronts, just to show if there is a really measurable difference between the Vue storefront and Magento front end. And we can see a huge impact in our case, especially until the people hit the checkout. After that, the difference, if you're coming from a faster experience and then going into a standard Magento checkout, is maybe not so pleasant. So a little bit of these benefits are just breaking apart there. But I'm very I'm really looking forward to the point where we can have the Vue checkout, because then we are comparing really two complete products with each other. Yeah, we got in touch with GraphQL, but not for like our shop. We use GraphQL combined with Laravel in another project, in an internal project of ours. So yeah, I don't know if it's easier with M1 or M2. In our case, definitely M1, because we just lack experience in Magento 2. So like even like extending APIs or so in Magento 2, for us, it's harder than in Magento 1 because of missing Magento 2 experience in this regard. No, it wasn't back then. It wasn't 9 devs. It was, I think we were 6 people that worked mostly on this project. Not all the time, full time, because yeah, you have day-to-day business. So it was kickoff was end of February last year. So it was March, April, May, June, July, August, and September for internal testing. So it was roughly 7 months. No, Summit, we use the Mage1 REST APIs and extended those. Or wrote our own parts of those. In this regard, I think Magento 2 is way more complete than Magento 1. Like they have way better API coverage. There are multiple things you cannot do with the base REST API that is introduced to Magento 1.